Oh, hello everyone, and this is Sean. Welcome back to Having Fun Repairs. It's kind of starting the journey. As much as I've mentioned, we've got to move, and part of that move does involve vehicle maintenance. And some of this vehicle maintenance that I'm going to do and record for this channel, you can obviously find the world over on many different channels. But in the vein of having to move and having to pack up a lot of things, it possibly being a while before I could start recording again, I at least wanted to keep some content coming. So hopefully you can bear with me. You understand why I'm making some of these videos here as of late. But anyways, yeah, my Volkswagen and my wife's Atlas, they both, prior to us moving, they need a couple things done. I need an oil change. I need to change my spark plugs. Included with that oil change is going to be an oil filter. And then at some point, I'll probably just do a video on the oil change and spark plugs. Make that one video. At some point, my aftermarket headlights, they need a bit of repair. One of the LEDs, I think it's actually over on that one over there, is burned out or shorted, and it blew the fuse that I had it tied to. So we're going to be pulling these headlights out and taking them apart. I'll probably do a separate video just on that, because I assume somebody out there may have these aftermarket headlights, and I think I've got a kind of unique way how I'm going to handle doing that LED replacement, because I'm not going to replace it with the type of LEDs that are in there. There's a different type of LED strip I have that it's actually going to be tied to the blinkers as well. Probably give the car some pretty cool, unique styling function. And then for my wife's Atlas, it's going to be oil change, oil filter, spark plugs, and air filter. So intake air filter. Why am I not going to do the intake air filter on mine? Well, all that's aftermarket on mine, and I use a reusable K&N style performance filter that I just clean and re-oil and refurbish. Nothing really too out of the norm for this video, so that's enough waffling. We can move on now to how I'm going to begin to tackle this. Obviously, you're going to need a oil catch pan. That's the one I'm going to use right there on the left. I've got all the parts I need, including for my wife, kind of in this center bag, including 2 quarts of oil in there, and then another several quarts of oil, 5 and 5 to 5 quart oil jugs over there. Roughly 6 quarts each car. Although I think with the Atlas, you actually have to get in 7 quarts, even though it only calls for like 5.6 or 5.8 or whatever. Last time I changed it, I remember having to go an extra quart in, almost 2 extra quarts in. But I don't know. We'll find that out once we get to there. One thing I like to do, if you don't have one, I've had this honestly since I was a senior in high school, so well over 20 years ago. Bought it when I was 18. I'm now 39, so and I've it was a good purchase. Got it from either Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone or something like that. It's an AM Pro open-ended ratchet set, and although I need to replace some of these ratchets, like the small one, it's locked up. This middle one, the lever here that puts it in either forward or reverse ratcheting mode, is broke, so it's a little bit hard to change. But if you can ever afford to get yourself an open-ended ratchet set, man, these things make life so much simpler when it comes to working on vehicles. Let me tell you, it's just because they're more flush. You definitely got a lot more. What can I say? A lot more play in between what you're ratcheting on and whatever might be around it. So it's just I can't speak enough about how easier things are with an open-ended ratchet set. Not saying you have to get this one. This is just the one I have. Okay. Now, as to getting to do the oil change on this vehicle, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to block off the back tires, and with a car jack that I got down there, going to lift up the front end, driver's side. So here in the US, the driver's side is on the left hand side, passenger side is right hand side if you're over in Europe, depending on where you live, because not all European countries are like the United Kingdom and the roads are reversed. But depending on where you live over in Europe, you know, that's going to be different. But we got several things that we need to do, so I'm gonna get the car jacked up, we'll get underneath it, and we'll continue from there. Oh, and if I hadn't made it apparent, gloves too. Wear gloves. Save your hands a bit from all this oil and stuff, and you know, having to scrub so hard to get it all out from underneath your fingernails, and just put on some nice nitrile or latex gloves. Anyways, now that I got the car jacked up, I actually did both sides to make it a bit easier, because I hate laying underneath a very tight space for too long. We're going to need to remove this splash guard right here, and in order to do that, you're going to have a lot of screws that are in here. You can see mine's a bit tore up from over the years. It's nowhere near perfect. This is almost a 20-year-old car, and it's traveled the world with me, many places over in Europe and here in the States. But you know, I've done some really dumb things with it over the years too, but she's still around. Anyways, you're looking for a T20 Torx bit, okay? And you're just going to have to come through here. Actually, I think that one's a 15. I'll have to go back and look. Yeah, I grabbed the wrong one. I put the 20 back in my case and put the 15 back in the ratchet. I have to get that changed. But anyways, you're going to go through it, and you'll need to remove all of these screws. They're going to run down the side, both sides. And then this splash guard kind of just pushes backwards, and you can bring it down. I actually think I have one that's the screw is actually stuck, so I have to swing mine out of the way in order to do it. But yeah, there you go. Let me get that bit taken care of, and then we can move on. Now that I've got the splash guard off, and you're going to locate your drain bolt right here. Now this is an aftermarket oil pan that I have on this car. It's not OEM. I had to replace it when I jumped something in the middle of the road that damaged my oil pan, and yeah, wasn't good. But so there might be a small variation between your drain plug and mine. Mine is a 17 millimeter, but yours might be a different size. If you got a Haynes or Chilton's repair manual, refer to that, or you know, you just Google it, you could probably find out what size it is. But you know, I just positioned my oil catch pan or can, and yeah, I'm gonna loosen this up and get the bolt out and let everything drain down into there. This is pretty easy peasy. We'll come back after I've got this done. Yeah, it's almost fully drained out now. It's dripping. Once that is out, I'll let it drip just for a few more minutes, but I'll put the plug back in, and then we'll have to turn our attention to the oil filter located right there. But small recommendation, you don't take your car out to drive or anything before you do this, because your oil will get way too hot. But I would recommend, you know, at least starting your car up and let it warm let the engine warm up for maybe, like, at max maybe 2 or 3 minutes. That does help with the oil flowing out of the engine bay, having it a tad bit warmed up. If you let the car run on idle for too long, or you go for a drive, it's going to be too hot. Once it comes out of the drain, you could potentially burn yourself. It's not like it's scalding hot, but it is hot. So, but I would recommend, you know, starting your car, let your engine run for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, 3 at max, and then change oil. But yeah, I'm gonna get that drain plug back in, and we'll turn our attention to the oil filter. When it comes to the oil filter, that's this guy right here. But the first thing you do, actually, you take this cap off. And I'm probably gonna struggle with it where I'm currently situated. Give me a second. I had to get a pair of channel locks to get it initially loose. But anyways, you're gonna take this cap off first, and then you have a little drain that allows you to drain this canister that the filter sits inside. I realize that the light is kind of compensating too much right now, washing out this this video, but you see that, basically that nipple right there. Now, with all European vehicles, you know, every vehicle is going to have some kind of specific tool, whether it's a wheel bearing puller or something like that, something you don't have. But all European vehicles are going to have something unique that seems just kind of like, why did you engineer it that way kind of mentality. And VW makes a special tool that you're supposed to put in here that pushes this nipple up and allows it to drain. But you could potentially convince me that there are other ways of going about this. So no different than what I'm about to do. I just push mine up. There we go. And well, if you get it up, now mine's going to make a mess because on top of that nipple, on the other side is a spring that goes around it that allows it to stay kind of in place. That spring on mine is missing. But if you pop it up, you can typically get it slightly out of the way, and then you can just drain from there. This typically takes a while to drain, so we'll come back after this, and after it's drained, and we'll do some more work from there. Once that is drained, the next thing you're going to do, you need to get yourself an oil filter wrench. The early Mark 5 Jettas, this one being a 2.5 liter inline 5-cylinder. Use a 24 millimeter oil filter wrench with 14 flutes. You see all these edges, these what you see here, that's all of our flutes, and then that is going to come up here onto the thing, and then you'll just use a standard socket set and to turn it to get it out. You know, with my open-ended set, I have adapters that allow me to basically turn it into a standard socket set. And we'll just loosen it up from there, and we'll get the oil filter out, and we'll have to get that replaced. Pretty simple. Just on and get yourself some leverage and turn. I'll need to do this off camera to do it though. Alright, filter replacement is pretty straightforward. Now with the old one, including the old O-ring, notice how the tab is facing upwards. You have to replace the O-ring as well. New one's going to go into the same groove that the old one went into. This is an STP filter. Came with 2 different O-rings. I just got to select the right one for mine, which is not this white one. It is this black one here. What I like to do is I kind of like to get a little bit of oil on my finger and just rub it around the O-ring a tad bit. That helps it go in just a bit slightly, makes this process slightly easier. One thing to not forget is if that nipple is still pushed out, you can see how it sits inside the house. You need to get it back into place. Otherwise, when you refill the oil, you're going to run into a very big mess. And we got it back into place now. But new O-ring goes in. Make sure it's nice and seated. Just like so. New filter is going to go in. And that's pretty much it. It's just getting everything reinstalled in the exact order that we took it out. So I'm going to get everything installed, but I'm not going to put the oil just in yet. I'll come back and speak towards that here in a few minutes. Okay, so I kind of want to go over why I don't just fill this up with the recommended amount of oil and let it run. I don't have any torque wrenches that tell me how many foot-pound or whatever of torque I'm putting onto things. I probably should invest in one. But what I do is I get things hand tight, you know, hand tight with my hands, if that makes sense.
And then I put whatever wrench or ratchet or socket or whatever it is, and then I tighten it. Hand tight gets it snug. I tighten it a bit more with the socket or ratchet or whatever wrench. And when it feels tight, right, you'll know what I'm saying when you tighten things, okay? When it feels like it is tight, I'm not talking about like super fit, can't move, can't budge. When it feels tight, when the resistance of it feels like it's going to take a lot more exertion to turn it than just, you know, what your hands are capable of, then I give it a about a quarter to half a turn more with a socket or wrench set or whatever. And that typically does me well. And now what I'll do is I'll put the first 5 quarts in the motor, and I'll let the motor run for a minute, and then I'll come back down here to check to see if there's any leaks. So if it's not snug enough, then I'll snug it up some more until the leak stops, and then I know I'm good to go. And you know, oil into the top, remove your oil cap down into there. Typical European cars, VWs, 5W40 full synthetic. That typically works well. I do this two-handed without a funnel. If you can't do it that way, I'd recommend getting a funnel, but for me, this is how I prefer to do this. Okay, one thing to note, you know, when car's in neutral, my parking brake's on, I still have this, you know, up in the air. Just letting the engine run for a minute. But we'll go down here. Obviously, before you start the motor, make sure you don't have any rags still in the engine bay or anything that can get caught up in the serpentine belt or anything. Make sure that's all taken care of. Hopefully you can hear me over this noise. But I just come down here and I observe everything, make sure that there's no leaks, and if there's not, then we'll lower the vehicle, check the oil level, and add more oil as appropriate. Now that I got everything buttoned back up the way it should be, and the car off the stands and level with the ground again, we're going to check our oil level. And when we look at it, we can see that we're not even really, we're barely measuring on that, realize it's not focused, barely registering on the minimum of our dipstick here for our oil level. So, like I said, yeah, oil change fairly simple. Just going to take some oil and pour it in and just keep checking the level. Make sure that it's above the minimum but below the maximum. Somewhere in there should be good to go. Okay, now that we got the oil done, it's time to do the spark plugs. Now, I always find it easier to start with the very left coil pack and then work my way inwards, because then that allows this wiring loom to have more play. And you can use like a screwdriver. I use this this wrench here, and what I do is I just kind of get it underneath the spark plug, and using the one adjacent to it, I just apply a little bit of pressure, just enough to get it to pop up, and from there you can get it with your hands. But let me get this out of the way, and we'll get the spark plugs taken out. As far as removing the spark plug goes, fairly straightforward process. Now, on my EM Pro set, I have this lovely 16mm socket that has like a rubber gasket down in it that grips onto spark plug, so when I pull the socket out, the spark plug will come with it. But I go from that socket to this knuckle right here, this swivel that allows me a bit of play, to this extender, and then to my actual ratchet. And I just drop it in here. This one I've pre-loosened, and it's fairly straightforward. Once it's no longer really ratcheting, what I tend to do is I get the rest of it by hand. So I'll just come in here like this and continue to unscrew. might be out. Then I'll lift up. Yep, there we go. We got the old spark plug out. I try to take a look at it to see if just kind of get a good look to see the wear on it. Doesn't look like my engine is running too hot or too lean, so it's pretty normal wear. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these spark plugs out, and then we'll work next on getting them back in, because there's some things that you should note before just putting spark plugs back in. Okay, concerning a discussion on spark plugs, usually I get NGKs, some iridiums. Went with Autolite this go around. They'll work just fine.
Hello everyone, this is Sean from the future, interjecting at this point because I'm about to eat those words I just mentioned. I should have paid closer attention to the type of spark plugs I bought. And I might go on a small little rant after I run into some issues with those spark plugs. Didn't really record that portion for this video. I kind of mentioned it in passing because I had to do a lot of troubleshooting. And I got a little bit frantic given the issue I run into these spark plugs, especially with having to travel from the current state I live in to Mississippi here in about 3.5 weeks or so. But I wanted to clarify this before I talk about it in the future. When it comes to Volkswagens, definitely make sure you're checking the type of spark plug you're supposed to use. Because I went back and looked at the box, and if you roll back, you'll probably see it written on the box as well, that they're dual platinum spark plugs. There are different metals per se, different composites used to make up a spark plug. The ones Volkswagens, mainly this Jetta, need to use is iridium. And it's because of combustion, certain factors, tolerances, compression, fuel, air, all that stuff. But essentially what was occurring is my combustion was not happening as it should, which did cause me to troubleshoot some things in the future. And so I was getting a lot of misfires, and I was like, well, what's going on here? But I do correct it, and I do go back and purchase the right type of spark plugs, and everything ends up resolving itself. So I just kind of wanted to interject here right now to get that bit of warning. So in case if anybody sees that I got Autolite spark plugs and that I eventually mentioned that they create issue for me, that it's not due directly because they're manufactured by Autolite, but it's because of the composite material that's used in it. It's not sufficient in order for my engine to create combustion in a effective manner. But yeah, we'll roll back to the video at this point.
But when you get spark plugs for a vehicle, one, they've got to be gapped correctly. So what I have here is a gapping tool. Okay, it measures the distance between the tip of your spark plug down in there, what's actually going to essentially through the plug produce a spark and an arcing, right, electrical charge, which will then meet this other end, I think called the platinum, something along those lines. But through that air gap that you have in there, you got to measure the distance. Okay, so you essentially just, and I can't do this one-handed with the camera in my hand, but you essentially just insert this key between those 2 points, and you rotate it, if it will focus, to make a measurement. Okay, there we go. Now for MKV Jettas and Golf, I had to go back and look, but pretty sure it's 0.040 to 0.044. So as long as I'm between that range of 0.040, try to hit that mark right there, and I'm not at 0.045, I call it good. Okay. I don't want to be below that, so sometimes I aim just slightly above, and we'll call it good. But then from there, before I insert a spark plug down into there and tighten it down, you need to get some form of NEC's cream or NEC's compound and coat all these ridges here, allow this to screw into place. Coat it with that NEC's compound or cream, whatever you want to call it. Now in a pinch, I don't have any on me, I'm going to use a bit of petroleum oil, the synthetic oil, and get it down all into these grooves here. Okay, and the reason for that is this, without some kind of NEC's compound or barrier, can get stuck because of heat. And if it gets stuck and you can't get it back out, you're going to have a very costly repair. Either somebody's going to have to extract this carefully if you're lucky, or you could potentially damage the motor even more. Just some things to think about, but I cannot stress that enough. You need an NEC's compound on this. But from there, after I've gapped it, got the NEC's on, just put everything back in and get it all back together. Alright, one last thing before I get all these coil packs back over to spark plug. Typically what I do is I take a dielectric grease and I just squirt a bit down into that boot where the spark plug's going to make contact with that center conductor. You know, dielectric grease is there to be a dielectric, so that's going to help out with the transfer of electrons between here and the spark plug. It's going to help out with the performance of those. One thing to note concerning putting your spark plugs back in though, is often I would recommend having something clean up here to cover these openings so you don't have any debris or anything going back in. But when you ratchet them back in place, if you ratchet them, only get them snug. Don't over tighten them either. For those of you who've done this for many years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you get a feel for it. Once it's snug, it's not wiggly at all, and I just mean just snug. Not over snug, not under snug, but just snug. You're done. Call it a day. But anyways, I'm gonna get dielectric grease all into these coil packs, get it all back together, and we'll fire this up. Well, as you can see, it's dark outside, and I have been on this car ever since, doing all that work and replacing the spark plugs. And when I first started the car up, it was misfiring really bad cylinders, 3 and 4 constantly, some misfires on cylinder 5. And I had to come into VCDS and you know, do a bit of troubleshooting, swap the spark plugs around that were misfiring, swap the ignition coils, the coil packs around that were misfiring. I didn't record it all because this was supposed to be a simple thing, and you know, over with. So eventually I just said, you know what, maybe my car doesn't like auto light. So I went back and picked up NGK iridiums, which is what I always run in the vehicle, and here we go. And she sounds great. So there you go. I probably should have never, I hate to say cheapened and gotten auto light spark plugs. I got to stick with NGK on this vehicle. Lesson definitely learned. However, now that all the maintenance is done, we can reset our service lights and everything and button this guy up. If you got VCDS, SRA reset automatically resets the service light, oil and inspection.
yeah, it's just gonna run and do its thing. But anyways, there we go. The see, 372 days since my last service, or 627 days actually, so well overdue. I've done the oil change, you know, once in between that, but not the spark plugs. I get anything on OBD2 other than my normal things? Let's see what it says. Read data. Oh no, that's not what I want. Current DTCs, no faults. That's good. Any permanent DTCs? Nope. And I guess this is just a word of advice. If you change spark plugs and your car is running rough, you got VCDS, go to your engine, go to your measuring blocks. For me, it's 15 and 16. And like I said, cylinders 3 and 4, they were just, they were counting up, like rough idle, constantly counting up. They'll count up to like 200 and then it resets and starts recounting again or something crazy like that. Cylinder 5, a few. 1 and 2 were operating pretty good on those spark plugs, so I mean, who knows. But NGKs are working good, and this car is good to go. So got quite a bit of cleanup to do. And what should have been a easy fix in typical fashion, it seems for me lately, turned into a pain in the butt. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode of Having Fun Repairs. Ignore that ticking. I've had it for a while. I think I got a stuck lifter, or maybe that's the it's not permanent, something over at the belt, I'm not too sure. My AC is out as well, so it could be something with that, not too sure. But yeah, that's going to do it for this this episode of Having Fun Repairs. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and goodbye. Bark.